Once to be a man was to stand with strength, honor, and purpose. But today, masculinity is crumbling, and men are just shadows of what they once were. Men in our day are lost, weak, and without meaning. This isn't just a passing phase or a modern trend. It's the result of deep and long-standing forces at play in our culture. Oswald Spengler, the German philosopher and historian, predicted this very collapse. In his seminal work, The Decline of the West, Spengler foresaw a future where civilizations, having grown weary and decadent, would lose their strength, their soul, and where the identity of man at the heart of that civilization would begin to unravel. But why? How did we get to a place where masculinity, a force once so integral to society's progress, has become something to question, something to dismantle? The answer lies in a deeper understanding of history, philosophy, and the forces that shape human nature. Today's men are adrift not because they've chosen to be weak, but because the world has shifted beneath their feet. They live in a society that offers little meaning, fewer challenges, and increasingly hollow definitions of success. To understand the downfall of men, we must first look back. Throughout history, men have been defined by the times they lived in, by the challenges they faced, the values they upheld, and the roles they were expected to fulfill. Take the men of ancient Sparta, where masculinity was synonymous with discipline, sacrifice, and duty. From a young age, Spartan boys were trained in the harshest conditions imaginable, taught to endure pain, to survive with minimal resources, to fight for their people without hesitation. Their masculinity was carved out of hardship, an unbreakable bond with their identity as protectors and warriors. Contrast that with men in ancient Rome at its height. While Roman culture initially revered strength and discipline, it too, over time, became soft. As Rome expanded and wealth flowed into the empire, the virtues of Stoic masculinity gave way to luxury and indulgence. Men no longer needed to fight to survive. They became consumers rather than warriors. The moral fiber of society weakened, and so too did the men who once represented its strength. Oswald Spengler saw this pattern. Civilizations grow strong, then they grow comfortable, and finally, they grow weak. But his insight was more profound than just a historical observation. He saw that the very soul of a civilization is tied to its ability to endure hardship and create meaning through struggle. Once that struggle disappears, once men no longer have to fight for survival or purpose, their identity begins to decay. Modern men are far removed from the challenges of their ancestors. We live in an age of convenience, where many of life's challenges have been outsourced to technology. Physical labor has been replaced by intellectual work. Discipline has been replaced by instant gratification. In such a world, what does it mean to be a man? For many, it means nothing at all. Oswald Spengler's vision of the world was cyclical. He believed that every culture rises, reaches its peak, and eventually falls into decay. But unlike many of his contemporaries, Spengler didn't see this as a purely material process. He believed the decline of a civilization was deeply spiritual, a loss of inner vitality. In The Decline of the West, Spengler argued that Western civilization had entered its late stage, what he called the winter of its existence. The once vibrant cultural soul of the West had withered, replaced by an obsession with progress, technology, and material wealth. This, he said, was the natural order of things. Civilizations, like organisms, are born, grow, and eventually die. What does this have to do with masculinity? Everything. In Spengler's view, men are the bearers of a civilization's vitality. They build, protect, and uphold its values. When the culture itself loses its soul, the men who uphold it become hollowed out as well. In the modern world, men are no longer seen as creators or protectors of civilization. Instead, they are often viewed as relics of a bygone era, outdated, unnecessary in a world where technology and bureaucracy have replaced the need for brute strength or leadership. And yet, the loss of traditional masculinity isn't just a shift in roles. It's a symptom of a deeper spiritual crisis. Spengler warned that as civilizations decline, they become increasingly individualistic and disconnected from their past. They lose the communal bonds that once gave them strength and purpose. Men, once the backbone of society, become isolated, cut off from the traditions and values that once defined them. We see this today in the lives of many young men. Raised in a world that values consumption over creation, pleasure over purpose, they struggle to find their place. They are told that the old virtues, strength, honor, sacrifice, no longer matter. And yet, without those virtues, they are left adrift, searching for meaning in a culture that offers little of substance. It is perhaps the youngest generation that feels the brunt of this crisis most acutely. The rise of the lost boys, young men who feel isolated, aimless, and disconnected, is not just a coincidence. It is the product of a society that no longer provides them with a clear path to manhood. For centuries, boys became men through rites of passage, through mentorship, and through being initiated into a brotherhood of shared values. Today, those rites are largely gone. Fathers are often absent, both physically and emotionally. Communities are fragmented, and the media, which once offered heroes and role models, now often presents a distorted or negative view of masculinity. Many young men turn to the digital world for answers. They immerse themselves in video games, social media, and online forums, searching for a sense of identity and belonging. But the virtual world is a poor substitute for the real thing. It offers distraction, but rarely meaning. Spengler's concept of the fellahin, those who live at the end of a culture, disconnected from its values and traditions, applies strikingly to the youth of today. They are a generation raised in a world that no longer remembers its past, that no longer values the virtues that once defined it. Without that connection to history, they are left to wander aimlessly, seeking purpose, but finding little more than superficial pleasure. The crisis of masculinity is not just cultural, it's deeply psychological. As men lose their connection to purpose, they also lose their sense of self. Studies show that men today are more likely than ever to experience depression, anxiety, and a sense of isolation. They feel disconnected from their communities, their families, and even themselves. This psychological toll is the price of a society that no longer values masculinity. Men are told that their natural impulses, their drive to protect, to compete, to assert themselves, are harmful. They are told that their strength is dangerous, that their ambition is toxic. And without a positive outlet for these energies, they turn inward, or worse, they turn destructive. In Spengler's view, the decline of a civilization brings about a decline in the individuals who inhabit it. When a culture loses its soul, its people lose their vitality. The crisis of modern masculinity is not just about changing gender roles or evolving social norms. It is a deeper, existential crisis. It is about the loss of meaning, purpose, and identity in a world that has forgotten what it means to be human. Is there hope for the future of masculinity? Oswald Spengler was a pessimist. He believed that the decline of the West was inevitable, that nothing could stop the march of history. But while we may not be able to reverse the course of civilization, we can choose how we respond to it. For men today, the path forward is not about reclaiming old roles or resisting change. It is about finding new ways to live with purpose and integrity in a world that no longer offers clear definitions of masculinity. It is about reconnecting with the values that have sustained men for centuries: strength, discipline, honor, while also adapting to the realities of the modern world. This will not be easy. It will require a rejection of many of the messages society sends. It will require men to look inward, to define their own sense of purpose, and to seek out the mentorship and community that is so often lacking today. The downfall of men may seem inevitable, but it is not final. There is still time to rebuild, to find strength in adversity, and to guide the next generation toward a future that values purpose, meaning, and integrity. The question is, will we rise to the challenge?